Relating to the discussion of the binary way of thinking, I'd like to mention the binary conversation. The binary conversationalist has difficulty speaking with other people and getting them to hear his views because all he can do is mention his own personal view, and along with the facts that lead to his position, he also has his personal feeling about it, which is either pro or con. And he can only speak to others by relaying his position, what he sees in the particular thing he's talking about, and inevitably the feeling comes out of whether he's pro or con based on what he's presenting. And the other party, who has the opposing, let's say he's pro and the other guy's con, so he is the other guy, all he hears is, you're pro and I'm con, and I'm not going to listen to you, and I'm not going to be influenced by you. That's all he hears, and he can't even, stuffs up his whole ears with cotton balls, and he will not listen to anything that his friend is saying. And how can two people have a conversation in such a situation as this? In the olden days, people knew how to listen to people who had opposing views and to hear them out. I don't think that, or unless people knew how to talk better, but I really don't know. But at least that's the way they make it sound in the olden days, and the way that they give teichacha in olden day style yeshivas is they just say the other view, and that's it. We'll get to that in a minute. But for the rest of us in the American society of, that we live in, of people who haven't worked on their listening skills, the orator has to work on his speaking skills, or the friend has to work on his, helping skills, his advising skills. And how does one do that? How does one change his conversation from a binary conversation to a conversation which will allow the other person to open up and feel like they're being heard? And I think the answer comes, actually I'll say it, b'shem, I think my mother's, one of her favorite books is called 7 Habits. And so I saw a page or two. I didn't read the book, but I did see a few things, and this is one thing that I happened to look interesting. You could tell whenever there's slanty type in that book, whenever there's italics, so you know that he's writing like a story that happened to him. So those stories are usually interesting, so I skipped to those. Whatever was in a room in the house with that mezuzah, so I ended up having a glance at it. In any case, what we come out from in this particular book is that the way to get somebody to open up and to really give somebody else information that that they need in a way that they'll accept it, is to not simply present the information and the important point that you see. There's something about it that they like, for example, and there's something about it that is wrong and bad for them, and overpowers whatever they're thinking about. Simply mentioning only your point is not going to get them to listen, because they're blinded by their binary emotion of positivity toward the item, based on what they see, based on the aspect of it that they see, which is a good aspect. But by agreeing to them, listening to them, and repeating back to them, the way he says it is 2 things to repeat back to them. Number 1, repeat back to them what information they see, and number 2, repeat back to them the emotion that they must be feeling based on the way they're talking. For example, let's say they're talking to you about purchasing a new game because their friend got it, and you can tell by the way they're speaking that it's really fun and really engaging, and there are a number of reasons why you don't think they should have it. Before you list those reasons, say, so you're saying that this new game is a worthy investment of your money and time because you feel like it has the promise of fun and excitement, and you think you'll really enjoy it, right? and see how he responds. See how the kid responds, or whoever he is that you were talking to. And if he responds to the affirmative, then you know that he knows that you've heard him. And now you can continue on and say something along the lines of, and what about this other aspect? And again, see if he, pushes that aside and says, no, that's not a problem because this and this. And then you respond back. So you're saying it's not a problem because of this and this. And therefore you feel that it's okay, whatever. And then you say, but what about this and this? And you can keep doing it. And the more immature and binary he is, it happens to be that you'll be able to influence him even, to do something, which you're not necessarily trying to do a bad influencing job. It says in the Mesilas Yesharim that meichrim who are selling things you're able to help the buyer better appreciate the value of something by using influential tactics on the buyer. Only you mustn't use influential advertising tactics on the buyer to buy something that they wouldn't buy otherwise, or is not really worth what you're selling it as. You can't trick the buyer into buying something wrong. But if you have something that's worth a certain amount of money, you can bring out the value, influence the buyer as to the correct real value of the object that you're selling. If there's a way of doing that, of helping them be ma'arich, helping them appreciate the value that you can do. So here, this tactic obviously can be used to trick somebody. That's not what you're trying to do. You're just trying to get someone who's a little bit naive to hear the other point of view, and the only way to do that is to help him understand that you hear his point of view, and that you're not a binary antithesis. So he doesn't label you as against me, but rather he says, "Oh, you're with me, and you still hear this other point of view. Oh, maybe I should also hear that other point of view." And binary usually doesn't work for American kids. But getting back to, the 7 Habits was written for American kids. Let's get back to European yeshivas. I mean, if Rav Tzvi Kaplan's yeshiva is a model of Rabbi Yerucham Levavos' yeshiva, as I think he says it is, so, and the Chumash Shir is a model of that yeshiva's Chumash Shir, so l'chayr, then it would be true that the tactic of just the lack of tactic, not using this tactic b'chlal, just simply saying things like they are, this is terrible, this is dangerous, stay away from it, etc. And, other people are all saying, but one second, I grew up with this thing my entire life, and I never really thought twice about it, and I've just been doing it. So it's really quite difficult for the American, to accept what the Rosh Hashiva is saying, because he even has some positive feelings for what it is, and he has to rip those out and replace them with these new negative feelings for it, and warnings to stay away from it. And how strongly should he implant those? Should he remember the positive feelings also? It's complicated. But we're going to put aside the question of, whether you should replace it altogether, or whether the yeshiva simply wants you to get the other side also. And we're not going to focus on that question. We're just going to focus more on, but how does this work? I mean, half the people in the room are not being influenced by Chalal, or they're not even gaining the appropriate information from the thing, because they're just, stuffing up their ears with cotton balls. They don't want to hear it because it's the opposing view. So why is the Rosh Hashiva doing it like that? And how can one effectively listen if he does want to listen to it, and he's an American, and he doesn't know how to appreciate helpful information or teichacha or things like that? The answer is al-khair, that one has to do the exact inverse of what we said before, which is the giving of advice using the tactic we described to take away the binary aspect of it, and instead he has to be able to hear that the Rosh Hashiva, he has to hear, instead of hearing it as a steer to his own worldview, first he says, look, I understand that emotionally, the emotion being portrayed over here is the opposite of my emotion toward this object, or item, or mahalach, or whatever it is. Let's say the Rosh Hashiva is talking about computers. That's not the only thing he talks about, but let's say. So my emotion is that I think the computers are necessary, I love computers, I find them colorful, engaging, fun, and of course useful. So, and he's saying they're bad and they're going to hurt me. So let's think for a minute. Is he really saying that, is he only expressing an emotion? Or is he also giving a reason here? he's giving a reason, right? Okay, so what's the reason? He says there are so many people who are not Torah Jews, not Jewish at all, and they have strong immoral opinions, and they express them, and you see them over and over again, and it has an effect on you. He agrees that they're fun and engaging, and that they're useful. He agrees to all those things, except for he's just adding also this other thing. And now let me look at the whole picture, the whole spectrum, with his information and my information. Not the opinion, just the information. And I'm going to form an opinion based on the two pieces of information. And then you realize that you're being blinded by the fact that your information is so pretty, and his information is so distasteful that you're just not putting it on your chart. You're not taking it from up your seichel. You're just feeling that, keeping that binary emotion you had before, and pushing away any other side of emotion. And it's important life skill for a person to be able to listen to people who are saying things that are not like what he's saying, because it's certainly painful. As I once quoted a friend, Akiva Palak, one of the greatest pains is having somebody say something that is contrary to your view. And that's something that's certainly great pain. A person has to learn to be seivel. A person has to learn how to do that in order to listen, because if he doesn't learn to listen, then he won't be able to gain from the people around him and all the messages that God is sending him. And in Hanami, he doesn't have to agree with them, but he has to be able to put down their information in his chart. And it could be that someone's going to give him a piece of information that it just simply isn't true. But the risks of that are mostly negligible. You can usually tell which sources are the ones that you shouldn't trust. You could weigh your own opinion about your sources too. Sources also you could say, this source is only 20% credibility. He's trying to give a piece of information which would make this thing 90% problematic. But I thought it was 100% okay, and now he's saying it's 90% problematic, but his credibility is only 20%. So you could sort of adjust it to now, so suddenly let's knock that down to a fifth of the size that it was, and now the information suddenly doesn't take up 90% of the other one, but rather 90 divided by 5 is 18. So it's only a 18% problem tzad, this information. And also, you have to know also whether or not you should dan it b'chlal. Maybe adarabba, maybe you should just go basa roiv and say it's nothing, and then it shouldn't be a problem b'chlal on the chart. In your clear and the other suffix, it really helps for making these cheshbainis to learn gemaras about sveikis. It really, works, gives the brain the chachma necessary to be able to work these things out really quickly. But the point, in any case, is that a person should really work on fixing his own binary situation, and work on, when he speaks to others, not being so binary, and assuming that he has a good point to make. I'm saying it could be he'll talk to somebody else and he'll find out that their point is better than his, due to his new objective point of view. And also he has to be more objective when he hears other people speaking to him. For example, Chamashir, which he doesn't have to necessarily expect will cater to his American mentality, which, requires that everybody else hear his view first before they talk. I mean, you can assume that the person has heard a lot of views before he's expressing his own in a public forum, and he knows your view, and he's not so binary that he, shut it down. And, it's important that a person weigh everything carefully and come away with the correct mahalach. Okay.